By now, the case had entered the phase that tests endurance more than adrenaline, the stage where headlines may cool, but the internal tempo of the investigation grows even more exacting. And inside strategy rooms, the conversations became sharper, less about what was visible and more about what remained invisible. The negative space between confirmed facts, because seasoned investigators know that absences can be as revealing as presences. And so timelines were no longer just reconstructed, they were stress tested, stretched against alternate scenarios, pressure applied to see where they bent or broke. And in those exercises, the early handling of the home reappeared not as controversy, but as data, a fixed starting variable in a larger equation, analyzed alongside response times, scene transitions, forensic turnaround windows, and communication sequencing. And what this revealed was something far more complex than a simple yes or no judgment about whether it should have remained sealed indefinitely, because real world investigations are ecosystems, not snapshots, and ecosystems evolve. At this stage, evidence no longer moved in isolation, it moved in correlation clusters, meaning a digital timestamp might be evaluated only after being synchronized with traffic flow analytics, environmental lighting conditions, and corroborating witness memory reliability assessments. And this layered cross referencing often produces subtle breakthroughs, tiny alignments that reduce uncertainty by degrees rather than by dramatic leaps, and each degree matters because reducing uncertainty incrementally is how serious cases reach prosecutable certainty, and that methodical reduction demands intellectual humility, the willingness to revisit assumptions without ego, including assumptions about early perimeter security, not to assign fault, but to strengthen structural understanding. And this reflective discipline is what separates reactive inquiry from strategic investigation. Outside the operational sphere, the narrative continued to ripple through public discourse, and with each passing week, the emotional dimension matured from shock to sustained vigilance, supporters urging accountability, commentators dissecting procedural frameworks, and experts weighing in on best practices for scene preservation. Yet amid all that noise, the central mission remained unchanged: establish truth through verifiable fact, and that mission does not accelerate simply because attention demands it. It advances when evidence aligns, and alignment takes time, especially when investigators must ensure every collection method, every documentation trail, every transition from secured residence to analytical lab withstands constitutional scrutiny. Behind the scenes, leadership teams conducted internal audits, not as admissions of error, but as instruments of reinforcement, reviewing body camera logs, entry exit documentation, chain of custody signatures, and command decision trees, because in high visibility cases, institutional integrity is as critical as investigative accuracy, and maintaining that integrity requires transparency within the system, even if not every operational detail can be shared publicly. And these internal reviews often strengthen cases by identifying procedural refinements, ensuring that when final conclusions are reached, they rest on foundations that cannot be shaken by later challenge. Simultaneously, emerging technologies quietly expanded investigative capacity, from enhanced forensic reprocessing techniques to refined data triangulation tools capable of extracting patterns previously indistinguishable from background noise. And this technological reinforcement underscores a broader truth: securing a home is an initial containment act, but modern case resolution increasingly depends on digital ecosystems that transcend physical boundaries, meaning that the symbolic gravity of a property, while powerful, must coexist with the invisible infrastructure of data science, analytics, and interagency coordination that now define 21st century investigative success. Emotion, however, never fully exits the equation, and investigators, despite professional composure, remain aware that beyond every spreadsheet lies a human story suspended in uncertainty, and this awareness can both motivate and burden, pushing teams to double check conclusions, to resist shortcuts, to guard against complacency, because in prolonged cases, the greatest risk is not oversight born of chaos, but oversight born of fatigue. And combating fatigue requires structured rotation, peer review, and renewed perspective, all of which are built into disciplined investigative frameworks precisely to preserve clarity when time stretches long. And so we arrive at another threshold moment, not defined by dramatic revelation, but by steady progression, where the debate about whether the residence should have remained indefinitely secured has evolved into a larger reflection on preparedness, adaptability, and evidentiary stewardship. And perhaps that evolution itself is evidence of institutional maturity because true accountability does not resist scrutiny. It incorporates it, learning, refining, strengthening. And as this story continues to unfold, what matters most is not the permanence of tape around a doorway, but the permanence of commitment behind the scenes, a commitment to lawful precision, analytical depth, and unwavering pursuit of documented truth, reminding all who watch that while suspense fuels engagement, patience ultimately secures justice.